This video is going to show you how to solve a two-step equation. I'm not going to do all of them because they're pretty easy, but I will do 13. And it says negative 2r minus 4 equals 22. Remember, when you solve any equation, you have to get the variable alone. This says negative 4 or minus 4. So you do the opposite, which is positive 4. And you do have to do that. Whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other of the equal sign. So the 4's cancel out because they're equal to 0. The negative 2r comes down. The equal sign comes down. And 22 plus 4 is 26. And what you have to do is inverse operations again. This is multiplication, negative 2 times r. The opposite of multiplication, the inverse operation, is division. You always divide by the number that is next to the variable. And the number next to the variable is negative 2. So you do that on the same side. The negative 2's cancel out because negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. And r comes down alone. That's what you wanted. And 26 divided by negative 2 is negative 13. And that's your answer. I could do another one, number 15. T over 2 plus 6 equals 10. Again, this is the variable that you are solving for, the t. You subtract 6 on both sides. You have to start to get that t over 2 alone before you touch it. So that means those positive 6 has to go over to the other side of that equal sign, and you do that by inverse operations. The t over 2 will be left on that side because positive 6 minus 6 is equal to 0. And 10 minus 6 is 4. At this point, what I do is that I put a 1 that is the secret 1, or the one that is not written but understood, right before the t. I put that there, and I realize that this is 1 over 2. Remember, to get any fraction to just disappear or to equal to 1, you have to multiply that fraction by its reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1 over 2 is 2 over 1. Whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other. I put a 1 underneath the 4 just to make it look like a fraction. What that does is that cancels out each 2, cross cancels, and it cross cancels the 1's. And the t comes down alone, and that's what you wanted alone, just the t. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 1 in the denominator is 1. 8 over 1 is 8. That's your answer. I'll do one more with a fraction. You have x over 4 minus 2 equals negative 7. Again, you don't touch the x over 4, x divided by 4 yet. You have to concentrate on this negative 2 and bring it over away from the x. So to do that, use inverse operations, and the opposite of minus 2 is plus 2. Cancel. Oops. And the x over 4 comes down. Negative 7 plus 2 is negative 5. Again, I'm going to put the 1 in front of the x because this is a fraction, 1 over 4. Anytime I see a fraction, that's division, the fraction, you are going to multiply by its reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1 over 4 is 4 over 1. By multiplying by its reciprocal, you're going to make that side over here, this side, equal to 1. And it would cross-cancel the 4's, and also cross-cancels the 1's. And in one step, you have x by itself. Now, you can put a 1 underneath here to just make it look like a fraction. Negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. And that's negative 20. And then 1 times 1 is 1. So negative 20 over 1 is negative 20. Whenever you have some word problems, these are particularly easy word problems. 3 times a number, when you have to translate, 3 times the number is 3 times x. The number is x. Plus 7, sometimes they say added to 7 or increased by 7, so that's plus 7. Is always an equal sign, and is 34. To solve that, you would subtract 7 on both sides. Inverse operations, you see a positive 7. If you're passing an equal sign, you have to minus 7 to get it to cancel. Alright, so 34 minus 7 is 27. And you do the inverse operation again. And you have 27 over 3 is 9. And that's basically it. Alright, I'm not going to do this one, it's the same thing. But I will go over to the next page, which everybody's having trouble with, is solving equations with fractions. Alright, so, number 1. Remember, anytime you see every time you see parentheses, you have to distribute. To distribute, you have 3 over 4 times 4. Alright, so I would suggest going over to the side of the page and just putting a small 3 over 4 times 4 over 1. So remember, you could cross cancel these right now, but you could also you could just multiply the numerator times numerator, and that's 12. And 4 times 1 is 4. 12 over 4 is 3. So 3/4 times 4x is 3x. Then you're doing 3/4 times 8. 3/4 times 8 over 1. Again, you could cross cancel these. You could cross cancel the 4 goes into 4 once, the 4 goes into 8 twice. But if you don't want to do that, you could still just multiply numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. 8 times 3 is 24. 4 times 1 is 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So 3/4 times negative 8 is negative 6. Sorry, that looks horrible. Let me get rid of that. A little bit better. And then you have a two-step equation that you're used to solving. Is 3x minus 6 equals 24. You do the opposite of minus 6 is adding 6 plus 6, addition. The 6 is canceled because they equal 0. 3x comes down, and you have 24 plus 6, which is 30. The last step is to do the opposite of multiplication, which is divide. And you have x equals 10, because 30 divided by 3 is 10. The second one, you have half times 10, and whenever you multiply by a half, by the way, right, just take a look what happens. Half times 10, over 1. Again, you could cross cancel these, but if you don't like cross canceling, you just go ahead, multiply numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. And look, 10 divided by 2 is 5. So if you notice what happens, a half times 10x is 5x. What's actually happening? Half times any number is half the number. You're halving the number. It's like dividing by 2. You could do the same thing with half times 6, but half times 6 is half of 6, which is 3. So distributive property again, and it's 3. And then you have a nice, easy problem. You do the opposite of addition, which is subtraction, and then you get 5x. The 5x comes down. The 3's canceled. They equal to 0. And 53 minus 3 is 50. Divide by 5. Divide by 5. And the 5's cancel out. X equals 10. And that's it. The next one, a little bit different. Take a look. All of these, number 2 and number 1, had distributive property as a fraction outside. You had to multiply. This one, number 3, does not have distributive property. Does not have parentheses. But it does have the x over here and an x over here. You need to get those x's together. So you have to bring the smaller, or you don't have to, but I always bring the smaller x over to the larger x. So I'm going to take this 3/4 x and minus it on each side. What happens when you use the inverse operation of subtraction is that the 3/4 and the x do not break up. Like if you divided here, you would break the 3/4 and the x up. You don't want to do that. You want this to just completely cancel out and there's nothing there. Then all of a sudden you have just the 2 on this side. And what makes this problem very easy is that it's 5/4 minus 3/4. The same denominator of 4 allows you to just subtract the numerator. So 5 minus 3 is just 2/4. And 2/4, I can put that down now, 2/4 x. You could reduce to, bring down to 6, you could reduce to 1/2. But before I do that even, you can add the 6 on both sides, because now you have to get the x alone. And you're bringing things away from the x. Now that the x's are together on one side, now it's like a two-step equation, and you're doing the opposite of -6, which is +6. So on this side, you get 8 equals, and instead of 2/4, I'm just going to put 1/2, because that's what it is. You have to reduce. Alright, so you have 1/2 x. As soon as I see a fraction, I'm going to just put those 2 dots for the multiplication, because I know I have to multiply on both sides. And I have to multiply by its reciprocal, so the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2/1. And that's what I'm going to do. The 2 cancels with the 2. The 1 cancels with the 1. X will come down, and 8 times 2 is 16. And if we could put a 1, I sometimes put a 1 on here. 1 times 1 is 1. 16/1 is 16. This is your answer right here. Number 4, and the final one. Again, you have w's on both sides. You have to, when you solve an equation, you have to get the variable on one side. So I'm going to bring the smaller over to the larger again. And this is subtraction once again. Because this is a positive 1/2, I subtract 1/2. So I'm going to subtract 1/2 from the 2w. Positive 1/2 minus 1/2 cancels out. So you have 7 coming down alone. And then you have 2w minus 1/2. 2w minus 1/2 is 1.5. But let me just put that 1.5 w minus 2. So you have this w over here. This is a two-step equation. Now you're going to add 2 on both sides. Remember, you have to get that w alone. If you do not have a calculator, this is 9, by the way. This is 1/2, 1 1/2 w. Alright, if you do not have a calculator, there's really one way you could do this. You change this. This is a mixed number right now. You can change it into an improper fraction. Right? You do that by multiplying 1 times 2 and then adding 1. So you're going to change this to 3/2. So it changes to 3/2. I don't know why I'm writing it all the way over here. 3/2w equals 9. 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 3 over 2 equals 1.5. That's why I'm putting it. I'm not really changing it. I'm just putting a different form of the fraction. So whenever I see a fraction, I want to multiply by its reciprocal. The reciprocal of 2 over 3 is, the reciprocal of 3 over 2 is 2 over 3. That's what I do on both sides. The 3 cancels with the 3. The 2 cancels with the 2. The W comes down. And this is when I put a 1 underneath, and look what happens. You could cross cancel. But if I don't like that, I'm just going to go ahead and do 9 times 2, which is 18. And 3 times 1, which is 3. I'm just going to do a little division here. How many times does 3 go into 18? That is 6. So W equals 6. And your problem is finished.